Hey, Neil, what's going on, my man?
Hey, Todd. It's great to see you and great to be back.
Good to see you, buddy. I got to tell you, when I saw your name pop up on the schedule, I was like, man, this is awesome. This is going to be a great show.
Yes.
Do you realize you were like one of my first podcasts?
No, I didn't realize that.
You remember that?
I do.
A couple years ago at the office.
Yep. Talking lead paint.
It was pre-COVID. We were talking about lead paint. And man, I'll tell you what, that video has gotten a lot of play. We've helped a lot of people with that. And that's one of the things that I love so much about what we're doing with this podcast is we're just educating people. Really, it's funny because when we spoke earlier today, you said, man, we're going to do this live. Like, what happened to recording it and editing and doing all this other stuff? And lots changed, man, in 2 years.
Yep.
This is episode 50 something or other. I don't know. It's over a year. So, but I'm excited tonight. We get to talk about something that you said, even when we spoke about lead paint before, you're like, I want to talk about lending money. I want to talk about hard money. And it's such a hot topic right now. And it's interesting because a lot of people are in business. I'm in business. You're in business. A lot of people own businesses, but not a lot of people are in the business of lending money.
Yep.
And that's like serious business. As a contractor, you go into someone's home and, you may buy some materials to get started, right? And they write you a check up front and maybe to cover some of those material costs. And you're trusting that you get that second payment. But you write a check up front.
It's like, Todd, it's like surreal. You wire over a couple $100,000 and you get a piece of paper back. Sometimes I second guess what I'm doing. I'm like, wait, what did I just do?
Oh, that's crazy. I know. And so I'm excited to talk about it tonight. I think we're going to bring a lot of value to people that are curious about, investing in real estate. They're wondering what hard money is. So what's new, man? What's going on with you? Last time that we spoke, I don't know. I guess, it wasn't the last time we spoke, but the last thing I knew of you expanding was you started a home inspection company, or you bought into one, you partnered up.
Yep, that went great. We started almost 3 years ago, and I own 3 companies, Todd, that service the real estate business. And if you're in the real estate business, life is good right now. I mean, who would have thought, right? During a pandemic,
this is true.
If back in March of 2020, I remember saying, "Oh my God, the government's going to shut everything down. They're telling people not to pay their mortgages." That's before PPP and all the other things, and that the real estate market would go up 30, 40% since then is just mind-boggling.
Well, you and I, we've seen a lot of change over the years. I mean, we were both around pre-08,
Yep.
kind of experienced what that was like, prior to that financial collapse in banking as it pertains to real estate. And so, I mean, this definitely has some markings of what it was like pre-08, but it's different in many ways. But guys, tonight we're talking about hard money. And I think it's fair to say that if you're in the real estate business, or you've been considering investing in real estate, or you've jumped in and you are investing in real estate, you've heard the term hard money. And so, I've been a real estate investor for more than 25 years. I started back in the late 80s. It's kind of hard to believe that it's been over 30 years I've been contracting and working and serving the real estate industry in one aspect or another. And I guess through, my career, 30 some years, I've seen a lot of bumps in the road, but, I guess the biggest change over the last 25 years is that real estate has hit primetime television with all the fix and flip shows. And it's kind of taken us into that next level. And really the amazing amount of seminars that we see. And if you're interested in investing, seen it too, where, a lot of it's rah-rah, a lot of, hey, come and learn how to do all this with no money. Some of that may be true. Most cases, it's not. And for those of you that don't know Neil, as I was saying just a minute ago, has been a contributor to our podcast since we started a couple years ago with just doing videos and really putting things out there for people to learn, to try and be, an experienced, trusted resource for people that are curious about the different aspects of real estate. And Neil and we've been friends for quite some time. I've been a client of Neil's. He has a couple different companies, as he just mentioned, lead paint. He is a consultant. He's an expert on the topic of lead paint, and has a great service where he really evaluates properties, especially rental properties, and and does these inspections for the landlords and the tenants. And then he just not too long ago, 3 years ago, got into home inspections. But really a big part of what he's known for locally here, and his true expertise is lending money to help investors to get that opportunity to enter this space where for many, they wouldn't have that opportunity any other way. And that's what we're talking about tonight as we get into discussions about hard money and some of the mistakes that flippers make or real estate investors make. And we're hopefully going to answer some questions for you. This is a live show. We'd love to hear from you. If you're watching it live, please feel free to comment your questions in. We will do our best to get your questions answered. If you're watching post live, go ahead and shoot us a comment and we'll be in touch with you. I'm Todd Sachs. I am your host tonight on our Sachs Realty's Tuesday night podcast. I'm a real estate broker here in Maryland. I help buyers, sellers, tenants, and landlords with both residential and commercial real estate transactions here locally. But I also have an amazing broker network all over the country. We just pointed someone in the direction in San Antonio, Texas. We were very instrumental in helping them buy a really awesome place for their family. So guys, if you have the need for real estate services, reach out to me. I'll be glad to point you in the right direction. Neil, just introduce yourself a little bit to everyone and bring us up to date with your hard money business.
Yeah, my name is Neil Roseman. I own and operate Block M Investments, and we make hard money loans, otherwise known as private real estate loans in Maryland. So we only lend in Maryland, and I have about almost 200 loans out there throughout the state. And I provide, fix and flip loans, and also, so buy, rehab, and sell. I also provide some medium-term financing for rental properties in the inner city Baltimore, like 5-year fully amortized loans.
And Neil, just so everyone knows, if they're listening in Michigan or California, where a lot of our viewers are, we're going to be talking about things tonight that can help them too, right? I mean, you lend in Maryland, but a lot of what you do sort of goes
the basic.
Without,
Yeah, the basic principles are going to hold, and different laws in different states and different ways of doing things legally. But the basic principles that we're talking about are going to hold across all 50 states. Yeah.
And that's great to know. And guys, just make sure that you understand what he just said. I mean, if you are somewhere other than Maryland, make sure that you are checking that the lenders are following the law and that you're protected in that aspect. So Neil, kind of give us an overview. I mean, there's private money, there's institutional or right. Traditional bank funding. Let's talk. What is hard money?
Well, most people think hard money means that if you don't pay your payments, we're gonna be hard on you. We're gonna break your legs or bust your kneecaps, and that's not the case.
Always good, yeah.
Right? So hard money means we lend on the hard asset. So most hard money lenders primarily are looking at the value of the asset. We will lend, anywhere from say 65 to 70% of the after repair value. While soft money would be your traditional mortgage, where they don't really care so much about the asset. They care about who you are, your credit score, your income, that kind of thing. Okay. So hard money. So there's like a financing curve that's out there. You've got partners, right? Okay. Then you've got hard money lenders. You might have private lenders. Then you might have institutional banks and local big banks and local banks. Then you might use your own cash or home equity line. So there's like a financing curve that people climb. Okay. So very few people that have been doing this for 10 or 20 years are going to use hard money because it's pretty expensive. Okay. But you start there and then you work up your way up the curve. You start to build some credibility. Maybe you can use some private lending, which is different than hard money lending. And then maybe you can have enough cash of your own to do it yourself, et cetera, or use banks and other different types of institutions like that.
A lot of people that I speak with on the brokerage side, these investors that are first-time investors, they struggle sometimes with the concept of expensive money or hard money because, they have to pay points up front and their interest rates are higher than it would be with traditional loans. But let's just kind of go over when does it make sense for this? And it's hard because a lot of people talk about doing this. They talk about, I'm going to get into real estate investing. But if I had a nickel for every time somebody said they were going to buy something or invest in something, and then you talk to them, even you lose track of them
Right.
because, they're not serious. And, you meet up with them a couple of years later and they still haven't bought anything. And they're letting that stop that fact of, the money that's available, the more expensive money, the hard money, a lot of times they realize, not being able to come to grips with the fact that you're partnering with somebody like yourself in a sense, right? By, giving up some of that profit, but that's what prevents people from entering. A lot of times that stops them because they think, oh man, I got to pay all this money for the money. So just kind of, how do you handle those kinds of conversations, and when does it make sense for someone to utilize someone like yourself and get hard money to make it happen?
Well, the first thing I would say is it makes sense when you can't use a bank. So you're not going to be able to use a bank in a lot of different situations. If you're buying a dilapidated house at a foreclosure that doesn't have like electric that's running, a workable kitchen, workable bathrooms, then you're probably not going to get bank financing on it, right? So now banks are out. Now the question is, so if the banks are out, what do you have left? Now you could go to friends and relatives or private people you might know. And if you can, great. It'll probably be cheaper money than hard money, okay? You could also get a partner. But a partner is usually more expensive than hard money, right? Because a partner, you're giving up 50% of the profits. So usually what happens when somebody gets a partner is that they're going to go out and get a money partner who's going to put up the money. They're going to do all the work and supervise the contracting, and they're going to split it 50-50, and they think somehow that's better than borrowing hard money, even though they're giving up 50% of the profits. Now, there are some upsides to that, okay? So somebody who wants hard money is somebody needs to close fast, who can't get traditional financing because it's a foreclosure, it's an auction, it's the property's in desperate need of repair, or it could be a shell if you're talking about Baltimore City, because you're not going to find any other institution really that's going to lend on that.
Yeah, well, firsthand, that was me, right? I was the money behind the deals. That's for 10 years, my partner, I put up the money. I found the properties, put the money up, and then sold the properties. In some cases, I didn't. I gave it to other agents to sell because they brought the deals directly to me. But that was it. He worked on the job site, handled the construction, and then I was that partner that was a 50-50 partner that took 50% of the profit. So, there's different scenarios that make sense. But if for me, it made sense to partner because I trusted my partner, and he trusted me, and we worked well together. It wasn't just, I didn't do anything and made 50%, but we had a trust. But a lot of people they can't do that. It's kind of hard. I always say, some of the only ships that sink are partnerships. It's kind of like this saying that I have, because I've tried it many times to be partners. But for, somebody always seems to get more greedy, it seems like, or say that they worked harder. So I agree. I mean, I think this is a situation where hard money is not as expensive as having a partner. It gives you a little bit more control as long as the lender is giving you that control. And that, we'll talk more about, what kind of a role a lender, a hard money lender takes. They're not coming and kicking in your knees. Neil was kidding. That may have been back in the day. But Neil, how long have you been in this business? How long have you been lending money?
I've been lending money for almost 16 years.
And so what kind of started? Give us some foundation. And before you answer that, the last time we spoke about this, I could be wrong with this figure, but I thought you had told me you had like $8 million on the street at that time when we were talking.
Right. It's much higher than that now.
So we
have about 200 loans out there. And, I got started back in 2005, 2006. I had the lead paint inspection business, and which is mostly I'm doing inspections for investors. And I just had I had hundreds of clients that were contractors and mortgage brokers and real estate agents. And I said, well, how can I make some additional money on the side besides doing the lead paint? I said, well, I could do a rehab. It'd be perfect. I could do a lead paint inspection, stop by the rehab, check it out, do another lead paint. It fit perfectly. And then I slapped myself upside the head and I said, what are you doing, Neil? Like, I don't even change light bulbs in my house. What, I'm going to manage a rehab? Seriously? And I kind of got really clear about what I was good at. And what I really got was that if you give me a spreadsheet and you give me money, I'll make you money. So at that time, most hard money lenders started in the rehab business, rehabbed a couple hundred homes, got a little bit burned out, took their money, step back and then started lending it. Well, I just kind of skipped that step and just started lending money. And the neat thing about lending money is, I used to own a couple of restaurants, and you would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, if it was a big restaurant, and you'd open up your doors on that Monday morning at 11 a.m. and you have no idea if a single person was going to walk through after you spent hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. The hard money business allowed me to do one loan, check it out, see how it went. It went well. I put some more money in, did another loan, did another. So it allowed me to grow very slowly and methodically to where I am now, which is not the easiest thing to do in a lot of other businesses. We have to put large chunks of cash in without knowing if you're going to get your money back. So that's how I started.
And now do you take other investors' cash as well? Is that kind of like your model? You have your own money that's in there, but people have seen, Neil's pretty good at this. You have a system that has succeeded for many years. You've seen a couple markets that have gone up and down. So is that what happens now? People say to you, hey, I will give you money, and as
yep. I mean, I use some of my own money and some of other people's money. And I do it where it's not transparent. It is transparent, but I do it such that my clients don't know. So my investors lend me money. I make the decisions and I lend that money out. And my investors just trust what I'm going to do. So it's not like I have to get approval from an investor on each deal. And that's one of the things that sets hard money lenders apart from each other. Some hard money lenders have investors behind them that have to approve the deal. So the person you're talking to is not the person that says yes. Okay. So that's one of my claims to fame is that it's not claim to fame. It's like what I'm known for is that I go to the property, I shake your hand and I say, I'm going to fund this deal. And it's funded. There's not somebody else who has to approve it or some loan committee who's going to kick it back or some, you're not talking to some sales guy who has to ratchet it up to an underwriting committee.
I'm trying to think of how we met originally. I don't even know. It may have been you may have been a referral. Well, who was it?
I don't know how you got my name, but I know we did those. You had those duplexes that we did the lead paint inspections for that were all like on the same street.
Yep.
I don't remember what the address was, but
I kind of think it was Dr. Frost. Do you remember him?
No,
Maybe it was. Yeah. I can't.
He's one of my mentors.
Yeah. Dr. Frost, man, he was a mentor for a lot of people locally
Yeah.
here. Of course, he's passed. But I remember one of the things that he taught me about lending money or, partnering or investing in real estate. This is many years ago. It's probably 25 years ago. And he always said that he never really, well, he got burned in '08, right? So a lot of these hard money lenders did, but this was way prior to that. He said, um, never get involved or lend money on something that you wouldn't want to own, that you wouldn't want to take back, right? Because it's such a unnerving business. You're putting this cash into the hands of somebody else, hoping that they do the right job, they don't make mistakes, that they can make a profit to pay you back, that they don't lose your money, right? And that you're not stuck spending more than what you've lent. And what is your kind of rule of thumb? Do you have that same kind of thought process that you don't lend on something that you would not want to own back?
I mean, that's correct. I'm a little bit more of a believer that there's no such thing as a bad asset. There's only a bad price. So what I try to really do when I go work with somebody might call me up and I'm like, wow, they're way off base. They want me to lend them 250,000. I don't say no. I just say what I'm willing to lend is 210, like based on there's very few projects that my lowest loan amount is 16 grand, just to put in perspective for you. So I'll lend 16 grand up to 400,000 or 500,000. Okay. And so the only thing, there's very few things I won't lend on, but there's lots of prices I won't lend at. If that makes sense.
Do you have a per borrower limit? You say you'll lend up to 400,000 on a deal. I mean, do you have a cap for one specific borrower at one time?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Now that cap might be different if it's your first deal with me versus your 10th deal. So I have a couple of guys with anywhere from 600 to $1 million with me, and they've proven themselves over time. Over the years, we might have done 20 loans together, and they keep paying. They pay one off every 3 months and do a new one, and they're constantly rehabbing 4, 5, 6, 7 properties. So it's something that is built based on our relationship going forward, based on the past. We don't start that way. It starts usually with 1 or 2 at the most.
Yeah. And by the way, all of Neil's information, it will be in the show notes if it's not already on whatever platform you're watching or listening to. So, feel free to put your, direct your questions or reach out to Neil, at will. It's before we get into the a lot of the mistakes that investors make. One of the things that I found, and the internet's a great place, right? I remember when we didn't have the internet as a resource, and where did you turn to learn great information? A lot of times you want to get into real estate investing. It's really hard to find good, solid, trusted resources that's going to direct you in the right, put you in the right direction. And it's going to tell you the good and the bad and kind of hold your hand and walk you through this. And there are a lot of rah-rah videos out there, how to get started, some of these resources are very truthful and upfront and good. But there may be some that aren't really giving you good advice. So, Neil, where can someone go? And, as I've done commercial broker, as a commercial broker and someone who's invested in commercial real estate and transacted commercial real estate, there's a lot of education that I've received being able to do things like a market analysis and a financial analysis and things that are really important when you're getting into investing of anything, of any type of investment. And I feel that out of a lot of the people that I talk with throughout the year, they don't have a good foundation of knowledge. They haven't really found a good resource of even where to go. And I'm going to give you guys some resources here. And then Neil is going to really kind of tell you some additional points. But CCIM is a great website, a great resource, very high level education. I don't make any money on these for giving you guys these tips. I'm just telling you, these are good resources. CCIM, if you Google search that, certified commercial investment member, you can actually join. You don't have to be in the industry. A lot of the members aren't in real estate sales, they're investors, and they have a lot of very expensive courses. It's expensive education. But I will tell you, it's solid. It's solid education. They do teach you financial analysis. They teach you market analysis, how to really understand where the market is going. In the areas where you're thinking about investing. There's another great resource called the Bigger Pockets podcast. One of the contributors there, Jay Scott. He's actually been a contributor to our show. These guys are solid guys. A great resource for you to go to if you don't already know about them. Check them out. But a lot of times not a lot of times, most of the time, you're getting good, honest stories, good, honest information, great resources. You can join, there's various memberships, and or you could just go on for free and get information. National RIA, and I know, Neil, you were involved with the local RIA here. So there's nationalria.org and then RIA.org. And I think these started back in the 80s, like 1985, I think National RIA, maybe 1987. I might have it backwards. So for a long time, 30 years, these sites have been out there, these associations that are trying to give good, solid information if you're serious about really getting into doing real estate investing. Locally here, we had a Shark Tank at the local RIA. Neil, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because you were one of the sharks, right? Where people were pitching deals. And then we want to get into, how to analyze the deal and, how to prepare to do your first deal, or how to prepare to do your better deal if you've done one and haven't had the best experience. So Neil, just kind of go over some of the other contributions you've given of your time here locally to investors. And let's talk about that local RIA experience and that Shark Tank that you were part of.
Yeah, I mean, people definitely have a vision of what Shark Tank is based on the TV show, and that's what it was. But it's more of an educational thing. People bring the sharks deals, and then the sharks are all lenders, and we'll tell you whether we lend on it, how much, and sometimes we'll bid against each other, like you see in Shark Tank. It's designed to be educational, and it's very enlightening for the people in the audience because they can see how we evaluate the deal. We ask a lot of questions that the people aren't thinking of, like whether it be zoning or building permit wise, or what county it's in, how the building permits are different. And we just bring up all the issues that we know about since we funded so many deals, and becomes incredibly educational. So I highly recommend the Maria Shark Tanks and Maria organization in general, which is one of the national RIAs, it's a branch of the national RIA. A huge fan of Bigger Pockets. I think you provide a lot, Todd. Now it's more generic. It's 1 hour on a topic. But it gets you enough information so you know what you don't know then. I need to understand this thing about lead paint. I need to understand about how lending works. Then you can kind of dig in at Bigger Pockets and find out what you need there. But the one thing that I'm really surprised that people seem to have like an adversarial relationship with their lender, even when they call initially. So I can't tell you how much money I've saved people. Even though I don't flip houses myself, I've funded over 1,200 properties, probably over 1,300 or 1,400 at this time. So you would think somebody who has never done a property would want to pick my brain. And when 100%. I call them, right, and so they come to me with a deal, and I explain to them how that might not be a good deal, and here's the reasons why, and they don't want to hear that. As a rule of thumb, now some people do. So one of the things I really recommend, because I'm the one, I shouldn't say the lender is the one person you should really listen to, because they're putting their money in with you. The appraiser does it. If you have it appraised, the appraiser might say it's worth 300. I say it's worth 250. And people come back and say, well, the appraiser said 300. Great, get him to lend you the money. See if he puts 300 grand up for what he says it's worth, right? So the real estate agents are going to tell you whatever they're going to tell you, right? Everybody's going to get paid. You and I are in it for the long term. We're, for the next 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. And if this deal doesn't go well, we're both going to suffer in some form or fashion. So I think one of the big opportunities is to pick your hard money lender's brain about your deals, or specifically, and not try to come in and try to sell me on the deal when it's your first deal. Listen to what I have to say, and then, take the cues from that. I can't tell you how many times people have listened to me and have negotiated a lower price. So I could fund 100% of it, versus I was only going to fund 80% because I thought they were paying too much for it. So that would be one thing I would recommend, is to use your local lender as a great resource to, here's one way to look at it, Todd. If the lender won't fund your deal 100%, it's probably not a good enough deal.
Yeah, because that's how you make your money. You want to lend the money. Doesn't do any good in your bank account.
Right. So I might lend you 80% of it, or have you put 20% down, but that probably means you're not getting a good enough deal. So that's one of those old sayings. And I have some clients who use me and don't need to use me because they want to be under the gun. They want somebody looking over their shoulder and double checking their figures. And they actually don't mind paying my points and interest rate to get that. So that would be one thing that's not, what's what I'm looking for. It's not a normal place to go, but whoever's lending you money has a ton of experience lending hundreds and hundreds of loans, and can walk you through what can go wrong.
Yeah, and a lot of times for that investor that is in the business, they acknowledge that, they only have so much money, right?
Yep.
So if a deal comes along that they want to take advantage of, it's a great resource to have lenders at their disposal. One other thing I'll add to what you said is, yes, you want a hard money lender that has your kind of experience. Absolutely. You want to ask the questions, how many deals have you lent on? Maybe even ask for a couple of referrals of some investors that have dealt with that hard money lender time and time again, because you get a good feel for it. I'm always, ask. I think the answer is within 4 questions away from what you need to know. So, I think a lot of people, they don't ask enough questions, and sometimes it's because they don't want to come across as inexperienced. But what happens is, not asking those questions ends them up, puts them in hot water, right? Because, they say, geez, I should have asked this question, or I should have learned more because this wasn't the best resource. But, it all starts too with a good agent. And, I think a lot of real estate agents, because, there are so many agents out there that do this part-time, and they're not really skilled in helping investors. I think it's also important that you utilize a real estate professional that understands what it is that you're trying to get into, or what you do as an investor, because, they can help you.
A good agent is invaluable. I mean, I think we know invaluable. That. And a lot of the investors are buying stuff without agents, which is normal because you're buying at foreclosures, you're buying in auctions and things like that. But you want your end user agent in the loop so they can tell you what you need to do to rehab this property to get the maximum dollars for it. Does it need to be a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, or a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that are huge, large bedrooms? Do you need a master suite? Do you need a finished?
What's the market calling for? Yeah. What's the market calling for? I mean, it's, but it is important that you ask them, hey, look, and even how many flips have you done?
Yep.
How many rentals do you own? Or, how many investors do you work with? And guys, a lot of times you might think that the process of that is like, geez, well, they're not going to have any time for me. Well, that may be the case. Ask that question. But, out of all of the investors that I've advised through the years, I've never had, maybe a handful of them have said, have you ever, they didn't have to because I told them, or they came to me through a referral, but I can't tell you, I'm never asked, how many flips have you done? How many investments have you done? That's an important question.
Yep.
And, and really, how do you, if you work with other investors, how do you divvy that up? I used to have people, they would say to me like, call Todd, I just bought this house and flip, and I made 25 or 30,000, 100,000, whatever it is. and their friend would call me up and they would say, yeah, I'm interested in getting into real estate investing. And I'll say, well, then I'll call the person that sent them to me, and I'll say, like, where do they fit in here? Like, are you done buying? I mean, how do I move them into the rotation to where I kick them a deal? Oh yeah, that's my buddy, help him out, make sure he's taken care of. But, a good agent is invaluable, and they're going to be able to point you in the right direction. And we'll probably even know a Neil Roseman that, is a great money lender. Let's talk about, Neil, when they're putting together, and I think we can kind of put this in like the bucket together, because I think that the mistakes kind of go hand in hand with the preparation or lack thereof. So, I see a lot of times, number one, the education isn't there. They want to get into this, but they're kind of like not pointed in the right direction or in any direction. They'll just whatever, show me a deal. They don't have an area that they want to work, a specific zip code or an area that they want to get very knowledgeable in, or that they are knowledgeable in, and where they can build some consistency. But give us some of those, kind of like top things that you're looking for as a lender that shows you that investor has done their homework and is, prepared to have somebody write them a check.
So the first thing I would say is this whole idea of doing something with no money, it is not realistic. Now, you might be able to do it with no money by borrowing money for your cash, but from a lender's perspective, even if I fund you 100%, and that means I'm going to fund 100% of the acquisition, 100% of the rehab, you still have to have working capital. You have to have money for closing costs and points, which is several thousands to possibly 10 to 20,000, depending on the size of the project. You need to front the construction draws. So usually hard money lenders are going to lend you money upon work completed. So if it's $100,000 or $50,000 project, we might do $5,000, $10,000 draws. Well, you have to get the first $10,000 done, worth of work done. Then we come in behind you, see that it's done, and write you a check for the 10 grand. So you might have to make payments to contractors ahead of time. You might have to order cabinets and countertops because they're custom made, but we're not going to reimburse you for them until they've been installed. Okay, so you need money for that. You need money for, oh, by the ways, I funded 1,200 projects. I don't think a single one has come in under budget. Like, there's always something that comes out. So I want to know that you have enough money to handle the, oh, by the ways, the things that go wrong. And you have to, of course, make monthly payments to me. So you add all that up, you're going to need tens of thousands of dollars of working capital. Anywhere from 15 on a very small project, very small, up to 30, 40, 50, 60,000 on a big project. So I'm usually looking for a $200,000 loan, usually around 30,000. Okay. 35,000, give or take. So you got to have some working capital. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the biggest mistake, Todd, I see people make is they buy a house, or they want to buy a house. They want to put 15,000 into it, or pick your number, 25,000, 30,000, and they're going to sell it for a homeowner quality rehab. So I'm talking maybe in the city. Well, to make that a home, and of course they want to use a $300,000 comp. Okay, well, nothing wrong with the 300,000, but to get that comp of a 300,000, you probably have to put 100,000 into it. Okay, you're going to put 20,000 into it or 25,000. It's going to be a rental quality. So there's nothing wrong with rental quality, nothing wrong with homeowner quality, but there is something wrong when you use a homeowner quality ARV with a rental quality rehab budget. And people don't understand that. They say, I see comps for 350 or 400 or 250, whatever the number is, but they don't look and see the level of detail, the level of finishes in those comps, and then translate that to what they have to do in their comp, in their property to get that same dollar amount at the end. So that's probably a big red flag for me right then and there, that they're not in tune to the market. They're trying to put 30,000 into something that I know it's going to take 80 to get the comp they want. And
so they're guessing.
Well, they're not guessing, Todd. They're using comps they see, but they're not looking at the finishes that need to get to that comp. They're putting the the decks on, and the coffered ceilings and the crown moldings and the level of appliance. And you can spend 1,500 appliances, and you can spend 4,000, you can spend 20,000, as we know. So
Yeah.
you've got to be consistent that. And another thing that they do is they just consistently under budget the rehab costs. And
I think that's what I mean by guessing. They'll say, hey, I'm going to take this house and it's going to cost me $200,000 to buy it. And I'm going to put $25,000 in it. Or I'm going to put $50,000 in it. And that, I think, is what I mean by guessing. They don't have the right system or the right people that they can go to quickly analyze that deal. And especially in this hot market, right? Because we're looking at things, and when you're buying investor property, something that a bank typically wouldn't lend on, or it would take way too long to go through that process. That's what we're really talking about. Like, how do you get the deal? Sometimes you may only have a week if you're lucky to get that deal. Maybe it's an auction, and there's an auction day on it. You can get an agent to take you through, and you can look at it. You might have some opportunity up front to start crunching numbers. But what happens is, then you need the offers are due, or the highest and best is due by this date. And in between that time, you need to arrange your money, your contractors, or your budget, and how you're going to proceed with this thing, and know whether you're prepared enough to do it to actually put in an offer. Right.
Yep.
What are some of the questions that when they call you up, so what should somebody do? They want to get into real estate investing and they need to establish a lender. So they call you up and say, Neil, I want to buy a house. What are some of the first things that you say they need to gather for you as a hard money lender to get things rolling?
Well, I think every hard money lender is a little different, but for me, it's very simple. I just need an address, a purchase price, a rehab budget, what you think the after repair, the ARV, the after repair value is. I want to know what your credit score is, what you do for a living, how much you make, and how much cash you have on hand. And that it's usually within 5 minutes, I can, on the phone, if you have that information for me, which is pretty basic stuff, right? I can be 95% confident about what I'm going to fund right over the phone without even seeing the property. Then if you agree with what I'm saying, it makes sense, you want to do business, then we go out, start the process, meet at the property, I touch it, feel it, do my quote appraisal, and then we go from there. So
are you doing the appraisal, or are you having a third party do the appraisal?
No, I think it's generous to call it an appraisal. I know that most of what I do is in Baltimore City. So I know on certain blocks and certain parts of town how much money I want to have in, right? So it's me just making sure when I do an appraisal, I can do a lot of it just from looking at the Google, right? But I want to say, okay, you're saying that you're going to do this for 40 grand. I want to make sure I'm aligned with that. Okay, I don't walk in and say, oh, this is a $70,000 job, not a $40,000 job. So it's not a true appraisal the way that an appraiser would do it. It's me appraising it for myself. And do I want to lend X dollars on this property?
Do you know of any programs that your investors use that kind of go through a line item of things that they can check and say, like replacing devices, how many devices are in the house, switches, outlets, whether
I know there's programs out there. I don't have one that I would recommend or like that. The one thing I would tell, here's one of the big pitfalls. Usually everybody talks about the contractors. Usually the contractors give you, I know I'm probably going to get lambasted for saying this, but they usually give you pretty accurate numbers. It just doesn't include everything. What they give you is accurate. But all of a sudden you need a French drain system. Well, that wasn't in their bid. Or the roof was assumed to be okay. Now you need a new roof. Or that didn't include the landscaping or the exterior gutter work or the cement work on the driveway or the sidewalk or so it's all these stuff that the contractor is not including in their bid that they're going to want. So even just using my draw schedule, which kind of lists everything out, it kind of forces you to say, I need to budget something for this item or I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is not as accurate as what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's programs that do that, but just doing something simple like that. Lots of times when I have a a problem with the borrower thinks they can do something for 35,000 and I think it's going to be 60, I just ask to see their draw schedule, their scope of work. Because then once it's broken down, I can break it apart. Oh, what do you mean you don't have money in there for a water heater? Or what do you mean you don't have insulation money in there? Or why don't you have money in for a roof? Well, I think the roof is fine. Well, how do you know? I'm just hoping. Right? Like,
well, I have a pretty conclusive. If somebody's listening to this and they want, what I have, I would be glad to share it with you. You just reach out to me, drop me a
that's
line.
great.
I'd be glad to share it. It is sort of like a quick walkthrough to establish, what type of product you have that you're starting with, and where you can just kind of check different conditions and or how it looks, and where you think you may need to spend money. I would always recommend that you go look at these places with an agent, with a licensed real estate agent, even if you're dealing with a wholesaler. Work something out with your agent that you bring them along, a good agent, because they're going to help you initially be able to say, let's look at this or look at that. And they're going to have a lot of resources too. A lot of it is your team. What I see a lot of people make mistakes is they get in over their head and they don't really have, I just talked to a contractor the other day. He's like, I need this contractor like ASAP. We're in the middle of construction. I'm like, well, you didn't think about that, but before you started this job, and now your project is screwed up because you're behind schedule, because now you're trying to get somebody in there and they have a work schedule. And, and that's one of the things, Neil, when you're doing hard money and you're paying, higher interest rates, time is money.
Absolutely. So the number one way that deals go bad in the hard money space or any space is the borrower runs out of cash. So cash can solve any problem. If you're doing your first deal I tell everybody, if you do your first deal and you break even, you should pat yourself on the back. Okay. Because that'll be the best lesson to learn. From all the courses you could take, nothing will be better than doing a deal. And if you break even, that's a win. Okay.
I agree.
If you run out of cash, then the project comes to a halt. You're not making payments. You're not getting it done. Your lender's not happy. The lender's going to step in and maybe will work with you and front you some cash. Maybe they won't. It just depends. Or they're going to foreclose, or they're going to ask you to sign it over to them. So you're number one. Almost any problem can be resolved with cash. It's when you run out of cash that it just brings a deal to a dead halt and causes problems for everybody involved.
And that's one of the things, points I wanted to bring out tonight too, because that is the biggest thing I see, and probably a huge red flag. I mean, you can see it coming, a mile away, because you're giving draws, which means, as work's done, Neil's paying you or paying for those things that are done. And that's why I said you have to have a lot of this cash up front to at least get that started.
Yep.
Because he's paying after the work is completed, not before. Which makes sense. So, the lender is going to see like, wow, you're out of money. And they're saying, yeah, well, I can't finish this step. I need the next draw. And he's going, wait a minute, that's a red flag. But some of the reasons, why this happens, and, what I try and tell people, from doing the deals myself, is that having first a budget, understanding, walking through the property. If you're brand new at this, try and go with something that doesn't need a complete gut job, a complete overhaul, because that's when you're going to uncover your uh-ohs, the biggest, screw ups that you missed, and that are going to take you out quicker than later. Just look for these properties that, are just neglected, right? A little bit. They're just a little neglected. Maybe nothing. The appliances haven't been replaced. The walls are needing
kitchen, bath, paint, carpet.
Yep, exactly. Flooring,
50,000.
Yep. Landscaping, things like that. Curb appeal, and then get yourself on some kind of a timeline. So establishing relationships with contractors, get yourself on a timeline, and set those budgets up for each one of those steps. Because what'll happen is, if you overspend, and you will overspend, you will go over budget, you can kind of reel it in, right? You can kind of bring it in. You don't need now maybe some of the things that you were going to do. Maybe you can have those as, as options. Like, hey, if things are going really well, I'll do X, Y, Z. If they're not, like I'll do hardwoods throughout the whole house. Or if not, then I can switch to carpeting and save a huge amount of money on flooring.
Yep.
Neil, what about credit? How do you value credit as somebody has, a not so great credit score? How do you look at that?
So I'm a little different, Ty. I mean, other lenders might have like very strict criteria, whatever that looks like. To me, it's an art. So if you want, let's say that it's a $100,000 deal where you're buying it for 70 and it's 30 construction for a total of 100. If you got a 750 credit score, maybe I'll lend you 100. Or maybe I'll lend you 105 if you're an existing client. Like a cover. If you have a 700 credit score, maybe I'll lend you 700, or maybe I'll lend you not 100 even. If you have a 650 credit score, maybe I'll lend you 92, 93. You got a 550, I'll probably still do the deal, but you're probably gonna have to come to the table with 20,000. So I adjust the amount of money you're gonna have to put in based on your credit score. And not everybody's like that, but that's kind of how I look at it.
So do you look at, I know I developed a contract that I had all my contractors sign. So, and I want to talk a little bit about the contracting process, because a lot of rehabbers I see them go down this road where they get taken advantage of sometimes by, bad contractors. What kind of advice do you get involved at all in who their team, who their team is in the process, their construction team, or do you let that be completely on the investor?
I let it be completely on the investor. And I do give, sometimes sometimes contractors are wanting to borrow money. They might be doing a flip in between their other construction jobs, right? So I give a lot of credibility to people who are doing their own work and know what they're doing versus a system analyst for NASA who wants to get in the rehabbing business, right? Now, they both have their ups and their downs. The guy that works for NASA has a full-time job making good money and can keep making payments, right? While a contractor can run out of money or maybe a little bit easier. So, and I also have several contractors that refer business to me because they're used to working with me. But I don't give that a lot of weight. I give it just a very small amount, because that contractor that can refer me that business, who's going to be doing the contracting, that can change after the first draw. There's a problem between the contractor and the borrower. The contractor leaves or gets fired, and then we're with a new contractor. So I really leave that up to the client. Now, there are hard money lenders, a couple of them out there that I can think of, that really like to teach borrowers and take them under their wing, and they offer that. I usually talk more about the financial side and really create and mentor them on their deals, while some people mentor them on the construction side because they have a better background in that. So that's another option for another type of lender for that type of a borrower.
Are you, we talk about permits. What is your
pain of my existence?
Yeah.
I like to say I'm a stickler for permits. If you're doing a full gut, you're pulling permits. I don't care what. I'm a little bit flexible in that I will pay out an HVAC rough-in, a plumbing rough-in, electrical rough-in without the inspector sign-offs, because I know those take a week or two sometimes, but I'm not paying out the sheetrock until I see the permit signed off, the inspection signed off. So that's kind of a no-brainer. It does become very difficult. You're doing a house in the county and it's all cosmetic, but you're finishing the basement and you're putting in a bathroom in the basement. And all of a sudden you're supposed to be pulling permits for that. They do or they don't. I think that my advice to the borrower is you need to have that conversation up front. If you're not going to pull permits, you got to make sure that your lender is okay with that. As a rule of thumb, I'm standing for and causing permits to be pulled on almost anything, unless it's just basic kitchen. If they're building a new bathroom, then they're putting new electrical, new plumbing in, they're gonna have to get a permit. So you just have to work that out with your lender, and some lenders are more flexible than others.
I think when we were going through the pandemic, I mean, it was really hard where, the permitting process was so painful that, a lot of contractors were skipping that never skipped before the permitting process just because the time wasn't on their side.
Right.
But one thing I want to say, so I've been in the business. I've been a contractor since the late 80s. And, have been involved in thousands of projects. And I'm doing a commercial building right now. And we called in for electrical final. And electrician that I've used for over a decade, great electrician. The inspector walks through for the final. And as he was checking the outlets were loose in the wall. Guys, I got to tell you, 30 some years being in the business, I didn't walk around and check the outlets for behind the electrician. What I really want you to think about, especially you new investors that are out there, is that this is a way at least to have somebody follow up on the contractor and see that it was done right. And that, some things that aren't done right, are fixed.
I think,
and in this situation, I mean, and I even said to the inspector, I guess this is why one of the reasons why people get permits. So I want you to understand that it's, as daunting of a task and the delays and things that are happening. I think that, the value is there that if you need the permits to go ahead and get them. And some lenders are requiring it. I mean, we are seeing, not all the time, but we do see situations where when that buyer goes to buy, there's another 1,000 square foot that's not on the tax record. And, the appraiser has it now on his report, and the lender will come back and say, wait a minute, why is there 1,000 square foot discrepancy in what the tax record says? So, we have had situations where they have come back, the lenders come back and ask for permits, and it's really slowed things up. You think it was delaying you on the front end. Now you're ready to get your check. And, now it costs a lot more money to get the permits, which you can get. Hire the engineers and the experts to come in and get it done. It's not that you can't get back on track. But I think,
but that also assumes, Todd, that it was done the right way. So if you're going to pay that engineer to come in and do that inspection, and he or she finds something wrong, now you got to rip out all the drywall to fix it. If it's electrical, plumbing, HVAC. So so yes, the appraisers can put that stuff down and cause problems, but I've also had not in today's world because it's a seller's market, but in a normal market, I have lots of agents that go in and pull the permits themselves to see if they were done because they want to advise their client these people didn't pull permits. Then the buyer has the option to either pass on the deal, okay, or they have to go back and get the permits. And usually when you're not pulling, my experience is when you don't pull permits, there's something wrong that has to get fixed. So it's never just as simple as go back and spend a few $1,000s and get the permits. You're fixing stuff that wasn't done right, because if it was done right, it would have been done by somebody who was pulling permits, right? Like,
not all the time. Not all the time. I mean,
agreed.
I do know, I do know plenty of, contractors that do things right, and, they'll ask the client if they want to pull a permit and they'll still do the work. But I think the assumption is, that there is going to be some skepticism on that. I think one of the things that we're seeing, at least locally here in Maryland, I don't know about other states, but we are starting to see where some brokerages have implemented a form that the seller sign that asks, or has them certified, did you do anything during your ownership that would have caused the reason to have permits, and did you pull them? I do think it's enough. I mean, look, we're trying to save you guys, a lot of trouble down the road, potential problems, and saving you money and things that where you might really enjoy this business and will make it to where you don't enjoy it. You never want to do another one again. So we're just trying to give you some good advice here to, let your conscience be your guide and make your own decisions.
Yeah, I also think there's and this is where you and I might have been differing a little bit. There's a difference in putting a bathroom in a basement and doing a full gut 120, $30,000 rehab and not pulling permits, right? Going down to the bare wall, four walls. So I do get there's some give and take there on some very simple things. I mean,
Yeah.
technically, if you're putting a new light switch in, you're supposed to pull a permit, right? Because you're writing. So I do get there's some gray area there, but I was kind of referring to the full gut rehabs.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. No, I agree. Yeah, definitely. Anything else? Any important notes that people should take here?
Let's see. Don't just, I can't say this enough. Don't underestimate how much cash you're going to need. It's just the bane of your existence, right? And I just invite you. I'm not saying you have to listen to your lender or a lender, but it amazes me how often people don't listen to me, and it's their first deal. I can completely understand if somebody's doing their 30th deal or something, and where it's like I just don't know if 2-bedroom houses in this neighborhood are going for what you think. So I would just be open and be learning and be sucking up the knowledge, and really, you don't have to listen to, you don't have to do what I say, but I would invite you to listen, okay, to your lender, because they have a lot to offer you in how to structure your deal, how to help it. There's lots of ways to use hard money effectively. I'll give a story, Todd, that you might really like really quick. Is I had a guy call me many years ago, and he calls me up and says, I'd like to borrow some money. I said, okay, you already own the property. He was 3/4 of the way done with it, and he ran out of money. But he owned his own money free and clear. And I'm like, God, you're an idiot for like running out of money. And then when I went out and met with him, he's like, yeah, I knew I was going to run out of money. I'm like, huh? And he said, yeah, I bought it with my own cash. I got as far as I could. Now I'm going to borrow the money. I'm going to borrow exactly what I need, just enough to finish it. And I'm only going to borrow it for like 8 weeks. I'm like, I think you're a genius.
Yeah.
I went from me. Right. I went from thinking he was an idiot from running out of money because he started knowing he was going to run out of money and didn't do anything about it, to he used hard money very strategically to get him what he needed with the least amount of time, with the exact amount of money that he needed. And I'm like, so there's just so many different ways to use hard money to get what you want, to use it. There's a lot of clients where I fund the construction money and they pay for the property, or I pay for the property and they fund the construction. So we're kind of splitting the money. So that's just less interest and less points they're paying. So there's just a lot of ways you could strategically use hard money. And I think your goal is to not use hard money, to wean yourself out of it and go up that financing curve to private money or your own cash or HELOC or a bank money.
Your story just reminded me of something, which I think is important. A lot of hard money lenders will lend with the condition that you're paying for 12 months of interest, no matter how short the term becomes, right? So do you see that a lot? Is that how you guys, when you're lending money, if you lend, you get a situation where somebody ran out of money, they used what they had, they got to a point, now they realize, hey, I only need $70,000 to finish the job, and I can literally get this done now in 40 days. What kind of costs?
I don't see a lot of people doing that nowadays. I think the hard money lending business is pretty competitive with some institutional hard money lenders in there. And that's why I charge points. I actually want you to pay me off right away. Okay. Because I'm charging you points up front. You pay me off. I get to lend the money out and get the points again. So that's kind of like your prepayment penalty, is paying me the points up front. So if you only pay a month of interest or 2 months of interest or 3 months, I'm fine with that. And I think most lenders are. Though that is a great question to ask, to make sure that you're understanding, if you're a borrower, what the terms of the loan are, so you don't get caught.
Definitely. And I always say, time is money. And I said it earlier, you guys want to think about, when you're doing this, getting it accomplished as quickly as possible, because I think that the biggest mistake that I've seen over the years of helping investors is that they underestimate the amount of time, and they get eaten up with interest, higher priced interest. And that every day chops away at their profit. There is an interest line item that you need to consider, or a cost of borrowing money that is real. And the longer it takes for you to do that project, the more expensive that cost and every other cost really becomes. I always say that you want to try and flip your money at least twice a year. So, like Neil's saying, if you have $70,000 in cash, you're going to do a $250,000 rehab or $200,000 rehab. At least try and make sure that you're completed within 180 days, that you can try and do that again. Because when you're talking about your cash on cash return, the more times you can flip your cash, as well as the cash you're borrowing in a 12-month period, the more profit you're going to make at the end of the day. And keeping those teams busy, you're going to find, good, reliable contractors that you want to keep busy if you really want to be in this business to do it again and again and again. I just want to mention quickly, in next week's podcast, we're talking about insurance. And, this is kind of like a big, this is a big item that I see people miss a lot. They don't take out an insurance policy, or they have an insurance policy that doesn't really cover them in the event that something happens, or that, could happen. And the biggest thing that I always try and remind people is that, you're going to have people come onto your site, the property that you own, and they're going to bring employees or other subcontractors. And a lot of times these people aren't covered. So you want to make sure that when you're dealing with contractors, that they have workers' comp insurance in place, because one of the things you're going to learn next week, if you tune in, is how that liability is your liability. And you have this property that you've capitalized, you've taken all of your money, you've put in, however much, 25 or 30% down to buy it. And, then you have a lender. And then, if God forbid something were to happen, and you're not covered, there could be huge liabilities on you for that. And then the other thing I just want to mention briefly is stay within a geographical area that makes sense to you. So a lot of times with the deals being thin now, you may want to stretch and go outside of your area of comfort to drive to back and forth or manage. And I see a lot of mistakes that investors make. Pick an area that's close to you that you can manage easily, that you're not going to say, I don't feel like driving out there today because it's going to take me an hour and a half to get there with traffic. And that will really could affect your bottom line and the ability for you to manage it effectively and really enjoy managing it effectively. So try and pick areas that are close to you, and then really try and develop some kind of a consistency in a product. I always look for houses that are 25 to 35 feet wide in the front and, is equally deep. And then I developed these designs that made it very simple for me to go in and open up a floor plan that makes sense or that's very desirable. So try and get yourself in a situation to where you're really comfortable with the product that you're renovating and that you're rehabbing. So if a townhouse is good for you, stick with townhouses for a little bit, kind of get those under your belt so you understand the ins and outs of that kind of product. Single family houses, same thing, try and develop what you look for, and if you reach out to me, I'd be glad to help you with this, share some of the notes that I've made through the years. And again, the worksheets that I've developed. Guys, we really appreciate your time. Neil, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. It's
a pleasure having you as always. Return contributor here, repeat contributor Neil Roseman. We love Neil. He's local here. He's a personal friend, guys. Reach out to him. And until next time, have a great week.